Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching how to make a modern top. For this texture beauty, we kept things fairly clean and went with a textured stitch, a geometric bottom that shapes to your curves, and a scoop neck for an extra bit of sass. Speaking of, if you like keeping it sassy with your crochet, you're in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet designs and patterns for the sassiest among us with new patterns weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 3 yarn will work, but I used a total of 100 grams of yarn, and that's 300 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 4mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you watch anything during your holiday meals. For us, we will be flipping between football and basketball. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 5 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and trinity stitch. This tutorial is for a size small, and you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 3 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're going to grab our 4mm hook, and we're all going to start by making an odd number chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to our waist. I need a total of 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters, so I'm going to start with a chain 39. Now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our first row, which is going to be a trinity stitch row with an increase along the end and the other edge of our row. Now, making sure that we're using a medium to loose grip, we're all going to start with a chain 3. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. That chain 3 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Now into that chain that we blocked off, or the 4th chain from our hook, we're going to insert with an increase. And our increase is going to be a double crochet, a half double crochet, and a single crochet, all into that same chain. So yarn over, preparing for a double crochet, we're going to bring our hook down into that 4th chain from our hook. We're going to insert our hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through. When we have those 3 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That is our double crochet, and now we're going to be doing a half double crochet into that same chain. So yarn over, into that same chain, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. That is our half double crochet, and we're going to finish off our increase with a single crochet into that same chain. So bring our hook down, insert with a single crochet. And that is our increase for our row 1. Now what we're going to do from here is our first trinity stitch. So doing our first trinity stitch, we're all going to insert our hook into that same chain that our increase is in. So we're going to bring our hook down into that chain so it is occupied and pull through. And we want a total of 4 loops on our hook, so we're going to be pulling up a loop into the following 2 chains as well. So into that following chain, insert your hook, pull up a loop for 3 loops, and then into that following chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop for 4 loops on our hook. When we have those 4 loops, all we're going to do is yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and then to finish off this trinity stitch, we're going to chain 1. So now that our first trinity stitch is finished, let's get started on the second one. It's going to be done pretty much the same way as the first one. So right after that chain, what we're going to do is insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into. So we're going to bring our hook down, and into that chain, it is going to be occupied, pull through, and we need to pull up 4 loops again. So into that following chain, insert, pull up a loop, and then into that next chain, insert, pull up a loop. Now we should all have 4 loops on our hook, so yarn over and pull through all 4 loops and chain 1 to secure. Let's do one more trinity stitch a little bit faster. So again, inserting your hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, we're going to insert, pull through into that following chain, insert, pull through, and into the chain right after that, insert, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. We're all going to yarn over, pull through all 4 and chain 1 to secure. From here, we're going to continue to repeat this trinity stitch until we have 2 chains left. But right before we move on, we are going to want to insert our stitch marker into the edge of this row. This stitch marker is going to show that this is the bottom of our piece, since we are going to be doing increases along both edges. So now that we've made our way all the way down with our trinity stitch, we should all have 1, 2 chains left. So now let's do our last one. So it's going to start off pretty much the same way that all the other ones have. So right after that last chain for our second to last trinity stitch, we're going to be inserting our hook into that last chain that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, pull through into that following chain, pull through and then into that following, which should be our last chain. And when we have those 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. Now for the last trinity stitch, we are not going to do a chain 1. Since we're going to close off every odd number row with an increase, right after we pull through all 4, into that same last chain, we're going to be doing a single, half double, and double. So into that same last chain, insert with a single crochet. Into that same last chain, insert with a half double crochet. And then into that same last chain once more, insert with a double crochet. And now our row 1 is complete. So let's get started on our row 2. So we're all going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now for every even number row, we are not going to do any increases along either ends. So getting started on our row 2, we're going to start by inserting our hook into that first stitch with just 1 single crochet. And then we're going to do our first trinity stitch. So it's going to start by inserting our hook into that same stitch that our single crochet is in, pull through, into that following stitch, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. So pretty much the same thing. And from here we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4 and chain 1 to secure. Now let's just do one more trinity stitch just to make sure we got it down. So we're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, pull through, into that following, pull through, and then once more into that next one, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4 with a chain 1 to close off that trinity stitch. Now we're going to continue repeating this trinity stitch until we have 2 stitches left. So I'm back and my row 2 is nearly finished. We should all have 1, 2 stitches left. Now just as a really quick tip, if you're working your way down and if it looks like we just have 1 stitch left, just flip your work over and there should always be 2 stitches left. And what we're going to do from here is close off our even number row. Like I said, we aren't going to be doing any increases or decreases into the even number row. So just to do the last one, we're going to be inserting our hook into that same last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, pull through, into that following, pull through, and then into that last stitch for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4. Then to close off any even number row, we're just going to put 1 single crochet into that last stitch. So we aren't going to do a chain 1 and no increase. We're just going to insert into that same last stitch with a single crochet to keep it nice and blunt. Now from here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows. So let's just get started on our following row 3 or our next odd number row. So we're going to chain 3 and flip our work. So getting started on any odd number row, it's going to be worked up the same way as our row 1. So start with the yarn over, preparing for a double crochet. Into that first stitch, we're all going to insert with a double. Into that same first stitch with a half double, and then into that same first stitch with a single crochet, and that is our increase. And now from here, we're going to do our first trinity stitch. So inserting our hook into that same stitch that our increase is in, insert, pull through, into that following stitch, insert, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, insert, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 4, and to finish off our trinity, chain 1. Let's just do one more. Into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, insert, pull through. Into that following, insert, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4 and chain 1 to secure. And continue on with this trinity stitch until we have 2 stitches left. We are now at the end of our row 3, and we should all have 1, 2 stitches left. So now let's close off our row with a trinity stitch and then our increase. So we're going to be inserting our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into, pull through, into that second to last stitch, pull through, and then into that last, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, and then just like how we finished off our row 1, we're going to be inserting our hook into that last stitch with a single, with a half double, and then also with a double crochet. And now our row 3, or any odd number row, is finished. And just for good measure, let's do our row 4, or any even number row, so chain 1, flip our work, and start this row off with just 1 single crochet into that first stitch. So insert with 1 single crochet, and to do the first one, we're going to pull up 4 loops again. So inserting our hook into that same stitch that our single crochets in, pull through, into that following, pull through, and then into that following, pull through all 4, chain 1, and just 1 more. Insert your hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, pull through, following, pull through, following stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, and chain 1. Continue on with this trinity stitch until we have 2 stitches left. We are at the end of our row 4. We should all have 1, 2 stitches left, and now let's do our last one. Now, like I said in one of our previous clips, none of our even number rows is going to have any increases or decreases. So to do the last one for our row 4, we're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, pull through, into that following, pull through, and then into that following, which should be our last, pull through. Yarn over, pull through all 4, and when we've pulled through all 4, we're going to single crochet into that last stitch that our trinity stitch is worked into to keep it nice and blunt. Now we're going to want to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have an underarm portion that can stretch from mid-underarm over to the corner of our underarm, making sure that the tail end of our row 1, because this is going to be the top of our piece, our stitch markers on the opposite end, still stays about 1 inch underneath our underarm because we don't want the armhole for our sleeve to be too big. Now I'll meet you guys back right after an odd number row or along the top, so opposite end from our stitch marker stitch, and then I'll meet you back so we can do our shoulder. So I am back with the entirety of my underarm portion. I have a total of 9 rows. My width is 2 inches or 5 centimeters. My longer end, so my increased length, is just about 11 inches or 28 centimeters. And now from here, we're all going to make a chain that is in multiples of 3 that ends on an even number that reaches all the way up to the top of our shoulder. Now I need a total of 4 inches or 10 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 18. So now that we have our chain, we are going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with just 1 single crochet, because remember this is an even number row. And now just to do the first one, we're going to be inserting our hook into that same chain that our single crochet is in, pull through, into that following chain, insert, pull through, and then into the chain right after that, insert, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 4 of those loops and do a chain up of 1. And from here we're going to continue on doing our trinity stitch, making our way all the way down, closing off our row with a trinity stitch that ends with just 1 single crochet. Now since we just want a boat neckline for this piece, no matter what size we're making, we're all just going to do 1 shoulder row. So I'll meet you back at the end of this row. Alright, so we are all finished with our 1 shoulder row, and we're now ready to get started on our neckline. So first things first, we're all going to start by inserting our stitch marker into an even numbered stitch from the top where we'd like for our neckline to be. I'd like for my neckline to be into my 32nd stitch, and that's just about 6 inches or 15 centimeters from the top. So from here, we're going to get started on our following Trinity stitch row, and since this row that we're about to get started on is an odd number row, it is going to start with an increase. So that's our double, half double, single crochet all into that first stitch, and then I will meet you back once we reach our stitch marker. So I made my way all the way down with my Trinity stitch. My last Trinity stitch was worked into the stitch right before my stitch marker, and I did close off that last Trinity stitch with a single crochet because we need the top of our neckline to be blunt. Now, just like the other rows that we've had, our following row is going to be an even number row, so that still is not going to have any increases or decreases. So from where we're at, chain 1, flip our work, and then do our Trinity stitch all the way down, making sure that we end our following row with a single crochet, just to get started on our following odd number row. So we have just finished up our first 2 rows for our neckline, and now we're going to repeat these 2 rows until this reaches mid-chest. So since we just finished up an even number row, our following row is an odd number row. So let's going to start with our increase. So chain 3, flip our work, and into that first stitch we're going to do a double, half double, single, and then do our Trinity stitch all the way down, making sure that we close off that odd number row with a single crochet because we need the neckline to be blunt. And then our following row after that, which is an even number row, it's going to start and end with a single crochet, and like I said, we're going to continue doing this until we reach mid-chest. And I'll meet you back along the top so that we can do our middle row and then mirror everything that we did here on the other side. I am back, and the first half of my neckline is all finished. I have a total of 21 rows, and my width is now 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, and now we're going to do our middle row. So since our middle row is going to be an even number row, we're going to do that per usual, so each of our even number rows don't have any increases or decreases. So all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and then make our way all the way down, and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So I have just finished up my middle row, and right before we get started on the other side of our neckline, we want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of our middle row, just so we know where the middle row is, because it is going to be mirrored, because the next side that we're about to do is going to mirror the first side that we did. So since we're all along the bottom, let's all chain 2 and flip our work. Now getting started on the second half of our neckline, we are going to be mirroring everything that we did on the other side of our neckline. So since we did an increase of 3 along the bottom, we're now going to do a decrease of 3, and this is going to be a decrease of 3 half double crochets. So we just chain 2, we're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch, pull through into that following stitch, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, and pull through, and we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, and from here we're going to yarn over and pull through all 5. Now really quickly, this decrease of 3 half double crochets is kind of like doing our Trinity stitch, so we want to double check and make sure that after this decrease we aren't accidentally doing a chain 1, because that could feel natural. So we're just going to leave it as is right after we pull through all 5. And now from here we're going to get started on our first Trinity stitch. It's pretty much going to be the same way that we did the other side. We're going to find that last stitch that our decrease is worked into. This is mine right here. So we're going to insert our hook into that last stitch, pull through into the stitch right after that, pull through, and then into the stitch after that, and pull through for 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, and now chain 1 to finish off our Trinity stitch, which is per usual. And from here we're going to continue to do our Trinity stitch all the way up, making sure that we finish off the row with a chain 1. Now our row right after this is going to be an even number row. So at the end of this row, chain 1, flip our work, do our Trinity stitch row, making our way all the way back down towards the bottom, making sure that we end the row with a single crochet, and then I will meet you back. Alright, so we have just finished up our following 2 rows right after our middle row. We should all be along the bottom, and let's just do our decrease together once more. So let's all chain 2 and flip our work. So just getting started on our following odd number row, we're going to start with a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over into that first stitch, pull through, following stitch, pull through, and into the stitch after that, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 5, and now our decrease is finished, so let's just do our following trinity stitch and I'll let you do the rest on your own. So inserting your hook into that last stitch that our previous decrease was worked into, we're going to insert into that last stitch, pull through into that next, pull through and into the following, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as the first half of our neckline, not counting that middle row. And when we do, we should all meet back along the top, and then we can get started on our shoulder. So I am back, and the second half of my neckline is all finished. I now have a total of 33 rows, and my width is 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. And now from here, we're going to do our 1 shoulder row. So we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our neckline. So for those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 32 stitches. So along this side, I made a chain 32, and now we're just going to do our 1 shoulder row, and it's going to be done exactly the same way as our previous shoulder row because they are both even numbers. So from here, just chain 1, flip our work, and then do our trinity stitch all the way down, and I'll meet you back at the end of this row. So I am back with my second shoulder portion. We should all have just 1 row, and we should have ended along the bottom. So from here, we're going to finish off our front panel with our underarm, and that is going to mirror the first underarm that we got started with. So first things first, we're all going to need to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led all the way up to our shoulders. So for me, I made a chain of 18. So along this end, I inserted my stitch marker into the 18th stitch. Now from here, since we should all be along the bottom, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work, and since this is an odd number row, we're going to start our row with a decrease, and that's per usual, and we're going to continue on with our trinity stitch the same way that we've been doing all of them, all the way up until we have 4 stitches left. Alright, so we've made our way all the way up, and we should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left. Now we're going to do our last trinity stitch and then our decrease. So getting our last trinity stitch started, that's going to start off the same way that we've been doing it. Inserting our hook, pull through into that next stitch, pull through, stitch right after that, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4, and since we're working into our last trinity stitch, we should have 2 stitches left before our stitch marker. We are not going to do a chain 1 because this row needs to end on an odd number of stitches. So we're going to work straight in with our decrease from here. So from here, we're going to yarn over. We're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into, pull through into that following stitch, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, which should be the stitch right before your stitch marker. And we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, so yarn over, pull through all 5 of those loops. And there's our first underarm row all finished. Now every even number row, we aren't going to be doing any increases or decreases because remember we are mirroring it from the other side. So chain 1, flip our work, and then do our trinity stitch to reach the end of the row. And from here we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as the first section. At the end of this row, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work, start the following row with a decrease of 3 half double crochets, work our way all the way up, and I'll meet you back when we have 4 stitches left to do our decrease once more. So we are finishing up our 3rd underarm row. We should all have 4 stitches left, and now we're going to close it off with our last trinity stitch and then our decrease. So we're going to start off our trinity stitch per usual. So inserting our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch is worked into, pull through into that following, pull through, and into that following stitch, pull through all 4. And now that we've pulled through all 4, we are not going to do a single crochet or a chain 1. We're automatically going to start working with our decrease. And that's going to start with a yarn over and insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into, pull through into that next, pull through and into the one right after that, pull through 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 5, and that's it. Continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as the first underarm portion that we did. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut. I'm back and I've just finished up the entirety of my front panel. I have a total of 43 rows and my width is 10 inches or 25 centimeters unstretched. And now we're going to do our back panel. It's going to be done exactly the same way as the front panel, but without this neckline cutout. And I've already have mine finished, so let's take a look at mine. So getting started on our back panel, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of chains that we started our front panel's underarm with. We're going to be doing the same exact increases and decreases, making sure that we are still maintaining the increases and decreases that we have along the top because we want the bottom to be mirrored. And we're going to continue that until we reach our shoulder row. Now from here, we're going to continue on with our Trinity stitch rows, making our way all the way across our chest from our first shoulder row all the way across to our last shoulder row right over here. And once we have that, we should still all end along the bottom. And then we're going to do our same underarm portion that we did for the front panel, for the back panel. Once we have that, do a chain up of one and cut, and then I will meet you back so we can seam everything together. So we are back and we should all have our front and our back panel all finished, and now we're going to seam up the sides so we can get started on our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to be placing our front panel on top of our back panel, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both of our panels. We are then going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and do a chain up of one to secure. And now from here, we're going to be doing a single crochet seam. So let's all start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert our hook in through there. Find that next stitch into the back panel, insert your hook in through there, and single crochet them together. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, you're going to insert your hook. Into that next stitch into the back panel, also insert your hook. And we're going to single crochet around everything, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of one and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that our sides are all seamed up, let's seam up our shoulders. So since we should all just have one shoulder row, all we're going to do is one, make sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seam that we just did for the sides is still along the outside. And then we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and we're just going to be doing 2 single crochets into the first side rows that we have just to secure it in. So we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and we're going to do a chain up of 1 to secure. And all we're going to do from here is find that top loop within the front panel, insert your hook in through there, find that top loop within the back panel's first row, insert your hook in through there with 1 single crochet, and we want it to be a little bit more secure, so we're going to be putting 1 more single crochet into that same side row. So into the side row within the front panel, insert again, into the same side row within the back panel, insert into there again, and single crochet. And from here, we're going to do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that everything is all seamed together, we're ready to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, let's now flip our work right side out, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam. And now we're going to do a single crochet row, working our way around our armhole. So working our way up and down our underarm, we're going to be alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, and then 1 single crochet into every stitch, making my way up and around. So just to get the first few side rows started, like I said, we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets, but we're going to start with 2 single crochets. So let's all start by finding our first side row, and this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook in through there. And if you're like me, you have some tail ends right here, you don't want to weave them in later, go ahead and place that over your hook. And we're going to single crochet around everything so that we don't need to weave those in later. Let's do this again. Into this same side row, we're going to find that top loop. Again, insert your hook with a second single crochet into that first side row. Now let's work into our following side row. This is my following side row right here. I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook with just 1 single crochet. Let's do this again. Into my following side row, this is mine right here, we're going to insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and there's 2, and then into our following side row, insert into that top loop with just 1. And we're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up until we reach our last stitch right before our shoulder seam, and then I'll meet you back. Now I've just made my way all the way up until I have reached my shoulder seam. Now I have inserted my stitch marker into that last single crochet that we have, and we're going to be inserting a stitch marker into that following single crochet that we're going to do that's on the other side of our shoulder seam so that we know where our 2 middle stitches are. So all we're going to do is find that following stitch, and insert your hook in through there with a single crochet. And don't forget to insert a stitch marker into that stitch. And from here, continue to put 1 single crochet into every stitch. When we reach our underarm, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, starting with 2. Then slip stitch into that chain space, and then I'll meet you back so we can get started on the length of our sleeve. Alright, so we have just made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, and now we're going to get started on the length of our sleeve. Now, since we'd like for this to be a short sleeve, we are all going to start with a chain 3. Now that we all have our chain 3, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. And now we're going to do our first trinity stitch that ends with an increase. So into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to do our first trinity stitch. So starting with just 1 single crochet. And then we're going to do the rest of our trinity stitch per usual. So insert your hook into that same chain that our single crochet is in. Pull through into that following chain, which is our second to last chain. Pull through, and then into that last chain that we have. Yarn over, pull through. From here, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. And now we're going to do our increase. So the same increase that we did for the underarm. So into that last stitch, we're going to insert with a single, with a half double, and with a double crochet. And our row 1 is complete. Now from here, we need to connect it into the base. So we're all going to start by counting up the next 2 available stitches, and then we're going to slip stitch into that second stitch. So here's my first available stitch. Here's my second. Into my second, I'm going to insert, yarn over, pull through everything. That's our slip stitch to connect this row. And remember, none of our slip stitches into the base is going to count as a stitch. Now we need to work our way up to the following row. So slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. That also doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. And into the sleeve, we're only going to be increasing into every other row. So for our row 2, let's do our first trinity stitch, which is going to start with our single crochet and then finish it off the normal way. And we should all have 2 stitches left, so now we're going to do our last trinity stitch that we do at the end of the rows when we're not doing an increase. So as a refresher, we're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into, pull through into that following stitch, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, which should be our last stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, and then single crochet into that same last chain to close off our row 2. And from here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows, so let's just do the following 2 rows together once more. So getting started on any odd number row, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. And let's get started with our first trinity stitch, which is a single crochet, and then finishing it off per usual. And when we have 2 stitches left, we're going to do an increase. So inserting your hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into, pull through into that next stitch, pull through and into that next stitch, which should be our last, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, and then into that last stitch, insert with a single, also with a half double, and then with a double crochet. Now let's connect it into the base. So we're going to start by finding our second available stitch. So here's my first available one, here's my second. We're going to slip stitch into that second stitch to connect our odd number row. Now again, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch just to work our way up to our row 4 or any even number row. None of those slip stitches count as a stitch, and flip our work. And from here, just do our trinity stitch all the way down with no increases and no decreases. Alright, so we all have our first 4 rows finished. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we reach our first stitch marker along the top of our shoulder, and then I'll meet you back so we can repeat everything we just did here, but instead of increases, we're going to do decreases, working our way back down. So I've made my way all the way up, and I have reached my stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to mirror everything we did here, but instead of increases, we're going to be doing decreases, working our way back down the other side of our armhole. Now since both sides of our sleeve need to mirror each other, for those of you that have ended along the outer edge, what you guys are going to do for your first row for the decrease side of your sleeve is just work your way all the way down with your trinity stitch. But when you work your way all the way down, since we are already working on the decrease side, You are not going to do an increase at the end of the row. You're going to end the row with a single crochet. So the same, just one single crochet that we would do along the outer edge, and then connect it into the base. And then once when you guys are along the inside, we can now all do our following row. So since we're now all at the base, we're going to slip stitch into the next 2 available stitches into the base, flip our work, and then get started on the decrease row. So what we're going to do from here, to work our way up to the following row, now working down the decrease side of our sleeve, we're going to need to slip stitch up the following 2 stitches into our base. So I'm actually going to take out both of these stitch markers because I do not need them anymore. And we're going to slip stitch into the following 2 stitches. So here's my first, we're going to slip stitch into there. And then into that next available stitch, we're going to slip stitch into there as well. Both of those slip stitches still don't count as a stitch. We just need to work our way up to the following row. And now we're going to flip our work. And now that our work is flipped, we're going to start this row off with a decrease. So yarn over, into that last stitch from our previous row, go ahead and insert, pull through, into that following, insert, pull through, and into the stitch right after that, insert, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 5, and our decrease of 3 half double crochets is finished. Now from here, we're going to do our trinity stitch all the way down per usual. So just to do the first one, we are going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our decrease is worked into, pull through into the next, pull through into the next, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1, and continue this to reach the end of the row, making sure that we end this row off with a single crochet again because we do need it to be blunt. And then at the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then do our trinity stitch all the way back down towards the base. Now for this, we are still decreasing into every other row, so I'll meet you back at the base just so we can connect it once more and get started on the following row. So we have just finished up our first decrease row and then made our way all the way back down with our trinity stitch row that ends with a single crochet, and now we're just going to connect it into the base together once more. So just find that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch into there to connect this row. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch and into the stitch right after that, into the base, flip our work and start it with a decrease, and from here just continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I will meet you back so we can seam our sleeve together. So now that we've made our way all the way around with the decrease side of our sleeve, we are ready to seam everything together because we don't have any more stitches left to work into. So let's all start by making sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. We are then going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, yarn over, pull through everything, and then we're going to do the same single crochet seam that we did for our sides. So just to do the first one, insert your hook into that first stitch into the front panel, into that first stitch into the back panel, single crochet, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Then do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that both of our sleeves are all finished up, the next thing we're going to do is our collar, and that's going to start with a single crochet row. So first things first, let's make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, taking a look at the back, and we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the neckline of our back panel. We're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and working into every side row, we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So just to do the first one, this is my first side row right here. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. I'm going to insert my hook in through there with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then into that same top loop with a second, and that's it. We're going to continue alternating between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. And then when we reach the front panel, 1 single crochet into every stitch, and we're going to make our way all the way around. Slip stitch into that chain space, and then I will meet you back. So now that we've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, we're now going to do a slip stitch collar. So from here, we should have all slip stitched into that chain space, and we're now all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our collar to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I made a chain 6. And now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So bring your hook down, into that chain, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. Let's do that again. Into that following chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through everything. and we're going to continue to slip stitch all the way down our chain, and remembering not to tug too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row can be too tight to work into. So now that we put one slip stitch into every chain, we're going to slip stitch it into the base. Find that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. And now that our row 1 is connected, let's get started on our following row. So slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. None of the slip stitches into the base count as a stitch, and flip our work. And we're now going to put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding that next available stitch, insert your hook into that back loop, yarn over and gently pull through everything. Again, into that next available stitch, insert into that back loop, yarn over and gently pull through everything, and that's it. At the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the base just once more. Now that we put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, we're going to connect our row 3 once more. So all that's going to be again is finding that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch it into there, and then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base. None of those slip stitches into the base count as a stitch. Flip our work and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around, and when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I will meet you back so we can seam our collar together. So I am back, and I have made my way all the way around with my back loop slip stitch rows. I don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together. And this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out. We're going to be inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We are then going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Then we're going to do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're going to find that first available stitch into the front panel and insert our hook in through that front loop only. Then we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel and insert into that back loop only. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through all 3 of those loops. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, and that's it. We're going to continue doing our outside loop slip stitch seam until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and when we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so we are back and our collar is all done and we are now all finished. Last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!